You have wandered long in the fog of appearances, not merely of the outer world, but the greater deception, the persona you have crafted, worn, and even defended so convincingly that you now call it I. But what is this? I, it is not truly you, not the radiant seed of your being, but an echo, a distortion, a mask. The false self is not merely an illusion, it is a living substitute, a guardian that once served a purpose, but now imprisons the soul. It was meant to shield when we are born. We do not wear this mask. We arrive as essence raw, divine, wild, and unshaped, but we are not allowed to remain this way. The collective demands we become comprehensible. The family, the culture, in the school, they all speak in unison. Be like this, and so the child learns to fragment, to push parts of itself into darkness in order to remain accepted in the light. This is the origin of the false self. It is not merely a lie, it is a survival strategy. It is stitched together from what pleases others, from what keeps the peace, from what provokes praise. A smile when you want to scream, silence when your soul thunders, submission in the face of injustice. Every time you deny your essence to belong, you hand over a piece of your soul to the mask, and the mask begins to live. The Greeks called it persona, a theatrical mask worn by actors on stage. It let the voice project, but it was not the face of the actor. So too, your persona lets you function in the world, but it is not your face. The danger is not in wearing the mask temporarily. The danger is forgetting that you are wearing one at all. I ask you now, when did you last feel truly yourself, not what others admire, not what your role demands, but the raw, trembling, unarmored self beneath it all? The one who dreams, the one who grieves, the one who longs without permission. That self has become buried beneath layers of adaptation, like a tree twisted by the wind. You have shaped your growth in reaction to the world, but in the deepest roots, the seed remains pure. It remembers what the tree was meant to be. To unmask the false self is to return to that seed, but the journey is perilous. Why? Because the mask is seductive. It gives you rewards, applause, admiration, status. To remove it is to risk the loss of everything you think you are. It is to let the ego die, and the ego does not die easily. It resists like a wounded beast, clawing to remain dominant. But I tell you this, there is no individuation without this death. Individuation is not improvement. It is not about becoming better. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness demands that we look into the shadows and call home what we have exiled. The false self is sustained by repression, especially of the shadow. What is the shadow? It is all you could have been, but were forbidden to be. It is your unclaimed anger, your sexuality, your power, your grief, your divine madness. It is also your forgotten brilliance, your intuition, your joy, your wild capacity for creation, all pushed underground. May the unconscious, because it threatened the image you were told to uphold, but the unconscious does not forget. It waits and it speaks through dreams, through symptoms, through inexplicable attractions and repulsions. It speaks in symbols, for symbols are the language of the soul. Have you dreamed of a stranger wearing your clothes? That is the shadow, showing you how your own life has been co-opted by the unfamiliar. Have you felt sabotage by your own hands? Missed opportunities? Strange accidents? Compulsions? You cannot explain. That is the unconscious demanding to be seen. We are not healed by denying the false self, nor by destroying it. That would only be another form of violence. No, we are healed by integrating what has been split off. The mask must be laid down gently, with reverence, for it was once your savior, but it cannot be your master. You must thank it and move beyond it. But how do we begin this journey? We begin by listening to the dreams, to the body, to the quiet voice beneath the performance. We begin by tracing the cracks in the persona, the places where it fails to contain our truth, where your laughter rings hollow, where your relationships feel scripted, where your days feel drained of meaning there. The false self has worn thin, and the true self knocks. The path to unmasking requires solitude, not isolation, but sacred aloneness, a withdrawal from the noise of the world, so you may hear your own voice again. The ancients knew this. The desert fathers, the mystics, the shamans, all retreated to the wilderness to find the face beneath the face. In solitude, the persona cannot survive. There is no audience for it. Only you and God, and the unfiltered silence between. You may feel fear arise. Of course, the ego fears annihilation. It whispers, if I am not this mask, then I am nothing. But this is the greatest lie. You are not nothing. You are the entire ocean behind the wave. You are the self, the eternal archetype at the core of all being. And the self cannot be destroyed. It waits for you, like a lighthouse on the shore of your unconscious, calling you home. The false self is the part of you that thinks it must earn love, but the true self knows it is love. This is the shift. When you touch the self, you do not become more, you become real. You stop striving and start radiating. You do not act, you are. This is why the mystics shine, not because they are special, but because they have dropped the mask, and yet the world will not thank you for it. In fact, it may resist. For every time a soul unmasks, it unsettles the masks of others. They may try to push you back into your role. They may call you selfish, rebellious, even insane, but you must not go back. The cost is too high. To betray the self is to wither inwardly, to decay in spirit while appearing alive. Instead, you must become the alchemist of your own psyche. You must descend into the blackness, the nigredo, and face the dismemberment of all you thought was you. Only then can the gold be found. This is not poetic metaphor. It is psychological fact. The path of transformation passes through fire, through breakdown, through bewilderment, but do not fear. The psyche has its own intelligence. If you surrender to its process, not with passivity, but with reverent attention, It will lead you where you truly belong. And what will you find there? Not perfection, not bliss, but wholeness. You will weep for what you've lost, and then laugh because you were never that to begin with. You will feel terror, yes, but also a strange liberation, the freedom of being no one but yourself. And from this place, love becomes possible. Not the love that seeks to be needed, but the love that simply gives, because it flows from a self that lacks nothing. Now I ask you again, who are you? Beneath the false self. Do not answer too quickly. Let the question echo. Let it disturb your sleep. Let it awaken your forgotten dreams. The answer is not an idea, it is a remembering. You are not the name you were given. You are not the image in the mirror. You are not the story others told about you. You are the fire that watches all these things flicker and fade. And when you see this clearly, when the false self dissolves like mist in morning light, you will finally come alive. The danger of the false self is not that it is evil, but that it is incomplete. It does not sin. It forgets the wholeness of the human soul. And in forgetting, it exiles the divine spark that lives in the depths. And so you become polite, civilized, predictable, a citizen of the outer world, while the inner kingdom crumbles into ruin. Vines growing over temples never visited. Waters rising in dreams that you dare not interpret. You see, the self is not merely psychological, it is mythological, it is cosmic. The false self speaks the language of roles and performance, but the true self speaks in symbols, in sacred images, in archetypes that pulse with eternal meaning. That is why dreams matter. That is why fantasy, intuition, imagination, the things you were told to grow out of, are in fact the map to your wholeness. You will never unmask the false self by logic alone. The mask was not created by logic, but by emotion, of fear, longing. And so it must be dissolved in the fire of experience, of inner encounter. There are moments when the unconscious erupts into consciousness in a breakdown, a mystical vision, a sudden illness, a love that shakes you to your core. In these moments, the mask cracks and the light pours in. These are not disruptions, they are initiations. The soul does not evolve by comfort, it evolves by disruption, by paradox, by the sacred wound that refuses to heal until you listen to it. Have you ever felt as though you were watching your own life from a distance? As though someone else were living your story and you were merely the spectator? This is the dissociation of the masked life. You are alive, but not fully here. You are speaking, but the voice is hollow. You are smiling, but the soul behind the smile is absent. And so you float functional, accepted, but secretly starving for something real. The way back begins with descent. Descent into the darkness you have avoided. This darkness is not evil. It is the womb of the soul, the place where seeds break open, the place where light is born. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your twin. It holds the very parts of yourself you need to reclaim, to become whole again. Your passion, your rage, your desire, your power, your tears, all buried to maintain the mask. When you begin the descent, the psyche resists. It throws up distractions, addictions, busyness, false relationships, endless goals. These are the ego's way of saying, stay on the surface. But the deeper self is patient. It waits beneath all of it. Like a heartbeat, you've forgotten how to hear. And when you finally turn inward, when you allow yourself to feel the ache of the mask, the grief of all you abandoned, the longing for what you truly are, something changes. The soul begins to respond. Dreams become vivid. Synchronicities arise. Books fall off shelves at the right time. People appear as mirrors. Symbols arise spontaneously. The snake, the cave, the moonlit forest, and, without words, that your life is no longer random. It is mythic. You are not just healing, you are becoming, but the becoming is not comfortable. You will mourn the false self. You will miss its certainty, its routine, its applause. It is a death, after all, the death of the image, the death of the good child, the perfect partner, the obedient citizen, and with every death comes chaos. But this chaos is not the end. It is the beginning, the prima materia, the raw, undifferentiated state from which transformation is born. Do you know what the alchemists really sought? Not gold, not immortality. They sought integration. They understood what modern man has forgotten, that the outer world mirrors the inner, and that the transmutation of lead into gold was a symbol of the soul's journey from fragmentation into wholeness. The lead is the false self, heavy, dull, dense with unconscious material. The gold is the self, radiant, incorruptible, formed in the crucible of fire. So do not fear the fire. It will not destroy you. It will burn away what you are not. And when it is done, what remains is true. Let me share with you a dream. For the unconscious often speaks where the conscious mind falters. A woman once told me she dreamed of wandering through a grand museum filled with paintings of people she did not recognize. As she passed each one, the eyes in the portraits began to follow her, and she became terrified. She ran, but at the exit, a mirror stood in place of a door, and when she looked into it, the museum vanished, and she was alone in a forest, naked and shivering, but suddenly filled with peace. This dream is the journey. The museum is the persona, a gallery of identities inherited from others. The staring eyes are the expectations of society, watching, judging. The mirror is the threshold, and beyond it lies the self raw, elemental, stripped of artifice, but finally whole. This is what awaits you. But you must be willing to lose the museum. You must be willing to pass through the mirror, and you must trust that the forest, though wild, holds more truth than any painted wall. When we return from the descent, something strange happens. We begin to radiate authenticity. People may not understand it, but they feel it. Animals come closer. Children trust you. Strangers weep in your presence without knowing why. This is the energy of the integrated soul, not because it is perfect, but because it is real, because it is no longer trying to be anything other than what it is. And from this place, you do not dominate others, you liberate them. Your presence becomes a permission slip, a silent invitation. You may take off your mask too. And this is the great paradox, that by unmasking yourself, you do not become less accepted, but more impactful, not in the artificial sense of influence, but in the sacred sense of presence. You become a living symbol, the embodied possibility that a human being can walk this earth whole. I have said that wholeness is the goal, not perfection. The difference is crucial. Perfection is a lie, a torment invented by the ego to keep you striving forever. But wholeness is holy. It embraces the broken and the beautiful, the dark and the light, the wound and the wisdom. It is the dance of opposites reconciled in the vessel of your being. You are that vessel. The task is to hold the tension between what you were and what you are becoming, between the false self and the true, between the known and the mysterious. If you can stay in this tension without collapsing into old roles or rushing into new illusions, something alchemical occurs. A third thing is born, not the mask, not the opposite of the mask, but the self, the unity that transcends duality. This is the path of the mystic, the inner marriage, the sacred union of soul and spirit, shadow and light, feminine and masculine, chaos and order. And from this union, creativity is born, not as art alone, but as a way of being. Your very life becomes a creation, not a performance, but a revelation. You do not need to perform anymore. You are already enough. You were always enough. You simply forgot, because the mask was loud and the soul was quiet. But now the soul is speaking again. Do you hear it? That is where we must end for now, but only in form. The true descent has only just begun. You ask me now, if I am not the false self, if I am not the mask I wear, then how do I find who I truly am? And I say this, you do not find the self, you remember it. For the self is not something you build, it is what you already are underneath the scaffolding. The false self is constructed brick by brick to please the world, but the true self is discovered when the walls fall. It was never gone, only obscured. But I must warn you, this remembering is not passive. It is an initiation, a confrontation with everything you have repressed, denied, or feared. The way is through the underworld. And this underworld is not out there, it is within you. It is the terrain of dreams, of moods that have no name, of archetypes that stalk your imagination in symbolic form. Many who enter this terrain for the first time mistake their discomfort for failure. But discomfort is the language of transformation. The self does not speak in polite language. It disrupts, it fractures, it insists. You will feel lost, good. You will feel dismantled, excellent. Only when you lose who you were can you hear the whisper of who you truly are. You may find during this inner descent that old images begin to arise. The wolf on the serpent, the forest, the flood, these are not accidents. They are symbols older than language, carried in the collective unconscious, waiting for your personal encounter. When the serpent coils in your dreams, it is not merely a reptile, it is transformation itself. Shedding means releasing identities, returning to the earth, only to rise renewed. Do not fear these images. They are your allies. The modern world has trained you to mistrust the irrational, to value logic above feeling. But the soul is irrational, not in the sense of being chaotic, but in the sense of being deeper than reason. Dreams, fantasies, intuitions, these are the soul's compass. When the outer world fails to make sense, the inner world rises with maps written in metaphor. Learn to read them, learn to dream consciously. For the dream is the theater of the self. One man told me he dreamed of a crumbling cathedral filled with singing children, while outside a storm battered the stained glass windows. He was terrified, and yet the children kept singing, even as the roof began to fall in. I told him the cathedral is the structure of belief he had inherited. The children are his inner innocence, untouched by dogma. The storm is the chaos of inner renewal. The dream was not a warning, it was an invitation. Let it all collapse. And let the song continue. This is how the self speaks, not in commands, but in symbols that reveal themselves only when you're willing to listen with the heart, not just the mind. And once you begin listening, something miraculous occurs. You begin to see the false self for what it is, a shell, an echo, a performance that once kept you safe but now keeps you small. Do you know the price of living as the false self for too long? It is not obvious, it is not dramatic, it is subtle. You begin to lose your vitality. You laugh, but it does not reach your belly. You work, but it does not nourish your soul. You speak, but you do not hear your own voice in your words. This is not life, it is imitation. And the tragedy is that it can continue for decades without anyone noticing, not even you, until one day a crisis arrives, a death, a divorce, an illness, a dream that shakes you. And suddenly the mask no longer fits. It becomes unbearable. You see, this is grace in disguise. For crisis is the psyche's way of breaking the mask. Not to punish you, but to free you. We call it neurosis. We medicate it. We escape it. But if we approached it as the ancient ones did, as a sacred summons, we would see it differently. Your suffering is not random. It is a message from the soul. And the message is this: you were never meant to live as a fragment. When the mask begins to fall, many try to replace it with a new one, a spiritual persona, a rebellious identity, a brand of authenticity. But these are just new disguises. The true work is not to replace the mask, but to sit in the void it leaves behind and wait, to let the self rise, not by force, but by presence. You must become still, not in action, but sacred stillness, a womb space of becoming. And when you finally become empty of roles, of identities, of expectations, then the archetypes begin to emerge. Slowly, reverently, You will feel the warrior arise not to fight others, but to defend your soul. You will feel the lover arise not to seduce, but to feel deeply, vulnerably, completely. You will feel the sage awaken not to preach, but to witness. And finally, the child, the one you exiled long ago, will come home, bringing wonder and wild joy. These archetypes are not costumes, they are not strategies, they are phases of the self. And they will not come all at once. They come in dreams, in seasons, in sacred cycles, each with a lesson, each with a gift. And when you welcome them not as gods, but as guides, you become whole. What is wholeness? It is not balance. It is not a tidy pie chart of traits. It is the sacred chaos of a soul that has said yes to all of itself. It is a man who can cry without shame, a woman who can roar without apology, a being who can say, I am both shadow and light, and I hide neither. This is what it means to unmask, not to become someone else, but to become everything you already are, to burn the script and begin listening, to leave the stage and walk into the forest of your own mystery, to stop performing and start inhabiting your life. When you live this way, something strange happens. Time bends. You begin to live in Kairos, not Chronos. Sacred time, symbolic time. You walk through a door and feel you've entered a myth. You sit by a river and it speaks to you. You meet someone's eyes and recognize them from a dream you never remembered. This is not madness. It is the return to the world of the soul. The false self could not hear these things. Its ears were tuned to approval, but the true self hears everything. The rustle of meaning behind the veil of events, the music beneath the noise. And once you taste this, even for a moment, you cannot go back. You may try, but the mask no longer fits. It suffocates, it blinds, and so you must go on, not because you have answers, but because you have glimpsed what it means to be